We have a study which has been done worldwide, and also we know that these processed foods are really bad because they lead to serious problems of high blood pressure, increasing prevalence of heart disease, stroke, kidney failure, and many other things. So how does that happen? It is actually related to the increased salt, sugar, and fat content in the processed foods. And this is how these foods are actually made and processed, and that is the definition of a processed food, that any food which has been stored and contains added sugar, added salt, or added oil, that is a processed food. The body does not need all this, and that is why it leads to high blood pressure. High blood pressure leads to increased incidence of heart disease and stroke and kidney failure and many other problems. So this is why we have to avoid processed food in our daily meals, and the common man food, which is a balanced Indian diet, which is a thali which contains roti, chapati, or vegetables and dal, and all these things are not fried most of the times. So that is why it is very important to take care of that, because we know now very clearly that heart disease is a lifestyle disease. So if you don't take care of your lifestyle, inclusive of course exercise and yoga and stress reduction and many other things, if we take care of that, 90% chances are that you will not develop a heart disease, and even if you have one, it will be under control.
Processed foods are any foods which are altered by mixing or by transforming them into different ways so that they can be packaged, they can be used, and their taste may increase. So there are certain packaged foods or processed foods which are highly processed, ultra processed. They are not good for diet because they have extra salt, sugars are added for preservatives, they don't have dietary fibers, they don't have the natural nutrients which normally foods have, and they have trans fat. All of these cumulatively affect the heart health in terms of, with the explanation that high salt increases blood pressure. The sugar content in that which is used for preservatives can cause a glucose surge and leads to type 2 diabetes mellitus and obesity. Third, lack of dietary fibers and nutrients, and certain additives which are added to add flavor to it. They may be detrimental to the heart. And these trans fats which are in good amount in these processed foods can lead to cholesterol deposition and ultimately blockage in the heart. So these are the things which can affect the heart muscles, the blood pressure leading to diabetes, and this can form a vicious cycle leading to cardiovascular deaths. So the various data which we have from all over the world and even from India, that right now the young age group, the office going age group, those who are working, they have higher incidence of consumption of these processed foods because they want everything handy, and this is affecting, in certain countries it is accounting for 50 to 70% of the calorie intake, which is very high. The various studies which have shown that, which comprise the population of somewhere around 10 million, which showed that if we have more than 10% of processed food in our diet, we increase the risk of cardiovascular death by 10%. So that is in nutshell a number, just to. So it is affecting the young age group, the elderlies taking those who prepare normal food at home, they are not much affected, but it is the young population which is affected the more. See, for cardiovascular deaths, it is the lifestyle. It is also called a lifestyle disease. So diet comprises of somewhere around 15 to 20% of addition of risk factors to it. So diet could be processed food, tobacco, excessive alcohol, lack of exercise, and all these things contribute to around 20-25% of the cardiovascular deaths.
Deaths worldwide are due to cardiovascular disorders. And in India, the absolute numbers are a whopping 5 million. And this breaches the rural-urban divide. Earlier, we thought it was a disease of the urban areas. Yes, the prevalence may be as high as 13% in the urban areas, but rural areas are not far behind at 7% or thereabouts. Similarly, it's a disease we thought always of the elderly age group. No, the seeds are sown when the child is in the mother's womb. Look at the nutritional survey in the school-going age group. 56% of the children had some form of metabolic perturbations which are likely to translate into cardiovascular disorders later on in life. And almost 25% of the burden of coronary artery disease occurs in productive age group of less than 40 years. Myocardial infarction occurs in Indians at an average age of 53 years, which is a decade earlier than the developed world. In the quality of food we eat, it's not the quantity, it's the processed and sugary food that we are eating. In fact, out of almost 7,000 edible plants, 50% of the global energy is coming from just three: wheat, rice, and maize. And wheat, especially processed wheat, is the biggest tragedy of humanity. It has been shown by the FAO data that in the second half of the last century, in the developing world, the use of refined sugars went up by 206%, while that of use of millets, sorghum, and pulses dropped by 30 to 45%. Just as when we were consuming around 15 grams per day of sugar in the beginning of the 20th century, this figure is 94 grams per day at the beginning of the 21st century. And what's the permissible limit? 25 to 37 grams for adults and 12 grams for children per day. It's been shown by both FSSAI data as well as a study by All India Institute of Medical Sciences that almost 68 to 70% of all food and beverages are high in either saturated fats or sugar or salt. The need to decrease sugar intake is given. It would reduce premature mortality. It will increase quality of life, and it makes economic sense. It's been estimated that in USA, if they could reduce the sugar intake by 20%, it would bring an economic saving of almost 10 billion. And if it could be increased by 50% reduction of sugar intake, then the benefits could be to the extent of $31 billion. So the moot question here then is, how do we do it? Now, food is a personal choice. So one could argue that an individual is free to make choices. But that doesn't happen. It does not happen with alcohol. It does not happen with cigarettes. If you just order a cola with the food stuff in a combo that we eat, it increases the sugar content by 10 times. And yet we order them. So personal regulation has not worked. So what we need is societal intervention. We need rules and regulations to tax and make these products totally unaffordable. Only then probably some sense will come of it.
Heart diseases are becoming very common today, and one of the main reasons is an unhealthy lifestyle or unhealthy food. That's why these are called lifestyle related disorders. Unhealthy food makes you prone to diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, and so it's important to avoid unhealthy food. The processed food that today are, because they can be preserved for a longer time, which are used, are quite harmful to the body. Because it's the main preservative which are used, some chemicals, salt, sugar. So all this and the chemicals that you use, all this make you more prone to high blood pressure, sugar occurrence, high cholesterol issue. And so it is important to avoid the processed food in your routine diet. It has been seen that if somebody has a heart attack and he continues to take processed food, he has more than 2/3 chance of getting another attack and a more severe attack. So it's vital that we are careful in our eating habits, and all these processed foods, too much bakery items, canned vegetables or canned non-veg preparations, soft drinks, salty snacks, all these are harmful, and I think we should be careful. And person who has a tendency or develops a high blood pressure or his cholesterol is rising on preventive checkup or sugar is rising, these are kind of red flags for him that you are getting more prone to heart attack, and you should avoid these unhealthy foods, what we call processed foods or even also junk food.
Processed foods are the foods which have already been prepared on a mass scale and are ready to eat when you get them. Foods like ready chips, burger, pizza, pasta, sweet beverages and soda and salty snacks, these are all part of processed food. They are tasty, easy to consume, but they are very unhealthy. They are rich in fats, and this fat is generally trans fat or hydrogenated fat. What it means is that this increases the production of bad cholesterol in our body and causes atherosclerosis. These processed foods are also rich in salt and sweet. High salt leads to increase in blood pressure and hypertension, and sugar causes diabetes. This increased risk of blood pressure and diabetes also increases the chances of having heart disease in younger people. Unfortunately, cardiovascular diseases are increasing all over the world and also in India, and we have younger and younger people getting affected because of cardiovascular disease. Our unhealthy lifestyle and eating habits which are bad and stress are important reasons why we have more incidences of cardiovascular disease nowadays. Because of increasing awareness, most of us know that fast food should be avoided as far as possible, but young students and young working people who are away from home generally don't have access to freshly cooked home meal, and they are more likely to consume this processed food. But they need to understand that it is dangerous because it is rich in bad fat, sugar and salt. It is tasty, it is convenient to use, but it is bad. It has been made to make you more craving for this processed food. It has been shown to promote production of dopamine in our brain. Dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter like use of drugs, which makes you sort of dependent on more processed food. So I will request everyone to avoid processed food as much as possible to stay happy and healthy.